Hello everyone, I will be discussing our Davidson Academy Online technology information. The first thing I'd like to discuss is our computer and tech recommendations, i.e. our hardware requirements. The first thing we require is that a student make use of a Windows or a Mac. This is because those are the only operating systems that we can guarantee all of our software packages will actually run on. Now we do require that a student make use of a modern PC. That's generally going to be something made within the last couple of years, and we prefer that a student make use of a quad-core device. As this is currently what Zoom recommends for the best Zoom operation, Zoom tends to be one of our more demanding pieces of software. So if you can run Zoom well, you're going to be able to run just about everything. That said, we do offer the full Adobe Creative Cloud, which includes packages like Photoshop or Adobe Premiere Pro. These are awesome. They are also optional for our students to use. But if a student does want to make full use of them, they're going to need something a little beefier, something probably with a dedicated GPU. So, once you have this computer, you're going to need to connect it to the internet. This is going to require at least a dedicated 4 megabits up and download bandwidth. This is Zoom's minimum recommended bandwidth, and we find that's about correct. Now, the thing to take real note of is that upload bandwidth, because a lot of internet service providers don't offer symmetric bandwidth. So if you get 12 down, you might only get 2 up. So keep an eye on that number, and remember, this is only for one user. So if you have 3 people in the house that will be using Zoom, at the same time, you would need at least 12 megabits up. And that's assuming perfect bandwidth conditions, which we know don't always happen, so you might need to leave a little more leeway there. Now we get to the other, slightly more mundane items. We do require physical keyboards. We don't want students operating only on a touchscreen. We do also require that a student make use of a headset. Some people have questions about this. Zoom does a good job of ignoring background sound, but it's not perfect. So we really want students to be able to focus on their classes and ensure that the other students in those classes can only focus on those students. So we require that students wear a headset at all times when they're interacting with their classes, ideally one with a front-facing microphone. Now, we require a webcam. Students are required to be on camera during classes at all times, but just about any laptop-equipped webcam is going to work fine. What that does bring us to is redundancy. Sometimes things break, and if a student's laptop goes down, we don't want them stuck out of class for the next couple of days while it's fixed or a new laptop is acquired. We want to make sure students can always get into class if something is broken. So that doesn't mean they need perfect redundancy. You don't need an extra laptop lying around. Something like an iPad is generally going to work fine if it's only going to be used for a day or two. But we just want something in the house that students can use when something breaks. That brings us to our software packages. First, I'd like to discuss is Infinite Campus, our student information system. This is where students will find their official gradebook and attendance tracking. Now, the reality is this is not a system they'll be interacting with on a daily basis, as official grades are important, but not as important as the place they'll actually be turning in that homework, which would be Canvas. Canvas is our learning management system. This is used for content storage and unofficial grades, and this is one of those systems students will be interacting with on a daily basis. This is where they'll find their homework, this is where they'll turn in the homework, this is where they'll get comments on that homework, and this is where they'll do things like revise rough drafts and the like. So this is the place we actually want students interacting with most often. The next piece of software we make use of is Zoom. I won't go too much into Zoom as I assume most people have interacted with it at this point, but this is our video conferencing software that we use for all of our live sessions and meetings. This is how students are going to interact with other students and their teachers. So unless Zoom happens to go down for the day, it's going to be very important that students are able to run Zoom. The next piece of software is HonorLog. This is our proctoring software, and the reality is it's probably the least favorite piece of software students interact with, because it can be kind of invasive, because it needs to be. The simple fact of the matter is that our accrediting bodies and the colleges that students will be applying for want some sort of assurance that students are adhering to our academic honesty policy. HonorLock is there for those institutions. The next piece of software would be Microsoft 365. This is a pretty wide-ranging software package. It includes things like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, things that students will be using to complete their coursework. But the most important things it includes are Outlook and Teams. The email address we provide our students and the messaging services provided by Teams will be students' primary means of communicating with other students and teachers when outside of class. We also offer G Suite. This includes Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, and you might be wondering why we offer this on top of the Office package provided by Microsoft. That's because we generally find that the collaborative features in the G Suite provided tools are a little better than the Microsoft provided tools, and our students simply prefer them. So we offer those on top of those Microsoft offerings. As I mentioned before, we also offer Adobe Creative Cloud. You can see this is a pretty extensive list of software. The reality is most students will only be interacting with Acrobat DC Pro, which offers PDF editing. Now, of course, they're allowed to use anything on this list and encouraged to. Things like Premiere Pro and Photoshop are great pieces of software, but students trying to make use of those will need that beefier computer I mentioned before. And finally, we have class-specific applications, things like Screencastify, Kahoot, and VoiceThread. These are things that students might never interact with here. They're only going to interact with these pieces of software if we're in a class that makes use of those, and those are going to be very teacher-specific. So there will be pieces of software that students will be interacting with depending on what their class load works like. And finally, that brings us to questions. If you do have any questions about the technology at Davidson Academy Online, feel free to email me at technology@davidsononline.org. Thanks for watching.